I would just like Stephen King and Sarah J. Maas to stop bombing my comment section and telling me I just need to sit down and write for 6 hours a day. Hi, I'm Neil Christensen, author of Dark White and host of Book Talk Writers Group. And look, there's plenty of authors out there that are going to give you writing advice on how to be an author. But so many of them are already making their living doing that. And that's wonderful for them. I'm certainly not saying that their advice isn't useful, but they also have the luxury of being able to dedicate their work hours to writing. And I think a lot of the time they forget or just never experienced what it's like to build this career from nothing when you already have a life full of commitments. So you and we're here to talk about how to write in real life. How to write when you have kids and a job and chores and all the other things that take up most of your time. And if I hear one more author telling me and others to just get up at 5 in the morning to get our writing done, I'm going to start to get unpleasant. So welcome on board. We're going to do this together. We're going to talk about writing in real life. So if you're here, you already know that you want to write. You want to be a writer. But there are so many steps between deciding that's what you want and holding a finished, published book in your hands, let alone selling that book to strangers. And there are a lot of videos out there that will talk to you about different parts of that process. I've watched most of them and found a few of them really helpful. But what I have not yet found, and what I wished I had had, was a single comprehensive video series taking me through every step from soup to nuts of writing, editing, formatting, publishing, and selling my book. This process isn't a straight road. There isn't one single path. This process is a tree that branches in multiple directions at every point in the process. You have choices to make after every step, often multiple choices, and each choice has its benefits and its consequences. None of them are wrong, but many are better or worse depending on your ultimate goals as an author. So at every step of this process, we'll talk about the choices. We'll cover all the options, and we'll discuss what the ramifications of each choice could be for you and your goals. So let's get started with step one, which might not be what you think it is. We all skip this step in our heads. It seems like it's so obvious that it doesn't need to be said, but it does. This is maybe the most important step in the whole journey to becoming an author. The idea is the seed that grows into the mighty oak. And believe it or not, the idea is what sets a great story apart from an average book. Now, a lot of cynics will tell you that the idea isn't that big a deal. There are only 6 stories, they'll say. It's how you tell it that makes the difference. To that I say, that's not the video we're doing right now. It can be true that most stories are reimaginings of other stories. It's true in general that art builds on itself. Paintings, sculptures, movies, TV shows, and yes, even books are influenced and inspired by other works that came before them. That's what gives us genres and tropes. Tropes, by the way, are not bad things to be avoided. They are integral infrastructure that holds a story together. But that's also not what this video is about. We'll get to tropes later. What I want you to take away from this idea is that your idea is more than zombies, but they use computers. Your idea is that deep well that contains your world, its characters, its heart, and its story. And that idea doesn't just pop into existence. It might feel like it sometimes, but trust me, it came from somewhere. So what's my point? If you are struggling to figure out just what your idea is, it's okay to look for inspiration in other art. That's where it almost always comes from. Inspiration is not stealing, copying, cheating, or any other pejorative term that my thesaurus didn't offer me. When you have a kernel, a feeling, That little tug in the back of your head that tells you that you want to tell a story, but you're just not sure what it is. That's when you dive into other art for inspiration. Read books like the ones you want to write, watch movies, go to art museums. You'd be surprised how much inspiration can come from an art gallery. Find a painting that speaks to you and ask yourself, what is happening here? What led to the exact moment depicted in this painting? Who are the people? Where is this place? Don't be too literal with it either. Let your imagination go where it wants. I have a novel I'm outlining right now that was inspired by a video on YouTube from the amazing channel Tale Foundry. You can find your idea almost anywhere. Just open yourself up and pay attention to the world around you. There are new stories everywhere you look. So how do you know when your idea is the right idea for your book? It's when that story doesn't go away. When you're at work or school and it's still there, when you turn the music off in your car so that you can think about it, when that idea is keeping you up at night, that's when you know you're going to have to write this story down. That's the moment when you've decided to become a writer. Now, are you a writer when you have the idea? There is nomenclature that gets tossed around in this community. You're going to hear it, and it's going to bother you at first. People will argue with you about what makes you a writer or makes you an author and what the difference between those two words is. And I don't even want to talk about it. I think it's a stupid conversation. Here's what I'll say. You are a writer when you start writing. So now we have to talk about what it is to write. These are the baby steps that we have to take in the beginning. This is before we start talking about structure. This is before we start talking about plot and character development. This is before we talk about theme. This is before we talk about genre. First, we have to decide, what does it mean to write? There are a lot of different kinds of people out there. People with different strengths and abilities, people with different capabilities, and people with different goals. So what does it mean to be a writer? What does it mean to write? For the purposes of this series, I want to make it clear that writing is the development of a unique story. Does writing mean you're sitting at a computer? No. Does writing mean you're handwriting in a notebook? No. Does writing mean that you're publishing something or even planning on publishing something? No. Writing is the process of developing a story, expanding that story, developing characters, making those characters fully three-dimensional. It's about building a world. It's about telling a cohesive story from beginning to end. What does that mean? How is that different? It means that sometimes you're sitting on the couch staring at the ceiling, and that's writing. It means that sometimes you're driving and your characters are playing in your head, and that's writing. It means that sometimes you're walking the dog and you've got your phone out and you're dictating into it, and that's writing. Now, yes, eventually, if you want to publish in whatever way works for you, if you want to put that story out into the world for others to read or experience, you're going to need to sit down and put that on paper. By the way, if you have no intention of ever sharing your work, you're still a writer. Being a writer doesn't mean making a living or even making money at all with your writing. But yes, if you want to share your stories with the world, you will need to put those stories into a medium that is compatible with some form of publishing. But what I want you to understand is that just because you aren't sitting in a chair typing doesn't mean you're wasting time. It doesn't mean you're not writing. This is why I get so frustrated with authors that tell you, you should be writing. You need to write every day. This is real life, people. And the way one person does something isn't and shouldn't be the way that everyone does it. If you're working on your story, you're writing. So many of us have to go to work 8 or 10 hours a day, commute both ways, make dinner for ourselves or our family. Maybe you have kids that you have to get ready for school or pick up in the afternoon, sports, or other commitments, giving baths and reading bedtime stories, a spouse or a partner that needs attention, chores around the house, family and friends that need your time. It's easy to look at life and say, when do I have time to write? That's my point. If you're working on your story, even in your head, you're writing. If you're cooking dinner and you have a fight scene being choreographed in your head, you're working on that story. And that counts as writing time. Okay, so now we've got an idea. We've got stories starting to form in our brains. For a lot of people, this is where we want to jump to the good part. I talk to so many beginning authors and they say to me, okay, great. I've got a great idea for a story. I know the characters. I know the plot. I've got a twist or an amazing world. How do I publish this? Should I go trad? Should I look at indie? How do I get an agent? How do I get a cover designer? How do I stop? We're going to cover all of that. This series is going to walk us through every single step that it takes, but you're jumping ahead. The next thing after you get an idea and you're starting to get a story and some characters bubbling up in your mind, now you have to get ready to put that story to paper. And this is where we come up against a really important choice. Actually, for most of us, I'll tell you, it's not much of a choice. It's more of a personal characteristic. And I don't want to dive into that whole thing right now. So we'll do that in the next video. The next video is deciding whether you're a plotter or a pantser. So if this is something that you're interested in, if this is a journey you want to take with us, if you want to see all these steps and understand yourself as a writer, then go ahead and follow the channel. And if you want to help other beginning writers follow along with us, give this video a like so that other people can find it. So we'll see you next time. Plotter versus pantser. Which are you?